Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is Explanation of Battle Through the Heavens episode number 234 based on novel. So let's start. The entire place was completely silent. Only the elderly voice, which caused one to feel an endless amount of sadness, reverberated across the sky. Xiao Yang was still a weak youth when they had separated back then. However, that separation at that time had lasted for decades. Hatred filled the youth's heart during this long period of time. He had trained with all his might, escaping from death time and time again while breaking through his limit. All of it was merely to rescue his father, who had once doted on him, and allow the latter to once again enjoy life in his old age. Jiu Yuan and the others became quiet as he looked at the somewhat skinny young man in the air. They knew quite a lot about Xiao Yang's past. Hence, they clearly understood just how much effort and sacrifice he had put in. An ordinary person was only able to see his extraordinary achievement. However, they had forgotten just how many life and death battles were hidden under this glaring achievement. This fellow is really a man. No one in my Lei clan can compare with him. Lei Ying sighed softly and muttered. Xiao Yang was able to slowly climb from being the tender youth back then until a giant that even they must regard seriously. Moreover, he also needed to escape from the assassins that the Han clan had dispatched during this period of time. The difficult journey had not only failed to cause the youth to have an early death but had instead become a grindstone for him to step onto the path of the strong. All of them admitted that they would definitely be unable to do better than Xiao Yang if they were in his shoes. After all, Xiao Yang relied only on himself. The once prominent Xiao clan did not leave him with any wealth. The experts from the Lei clan were quiet in the face of Lei Ying's soft sigh. They were unable to refute him. Xiao Yang GG. Zuna bit her lips softly. Her pretty eyes contained a redness as she looked at the repeatedly trembling back. She was able to sense the surging emotions in the latter's heart. She was well aware of the effort Xiao Yang had put in during these years. That elderly figure within the prison lifted his hand with great difficulty. His eyes stared intently at the black-clothed young man. He could still see some traces of the youth from back then on the already matured face. The son, whom he was once proud of, had really once again appeared in front of him. Child. Tears continued to flow from his eyes. After which, he suddenly pounced forward. His voice was hoarse as he roared, "Yanga, leave." After being imprisoned by the Han clan for so many years, he was clearly aware of just how terrifying the Han clan was. The Do Huang or even Do Zong, who could dominate the Jomar Empire back then, was only considered ordinary in that place. Such a strength was sufficient to cause one to feel a sense of hopelessness. Xiao Yang looked at the elderly figure, who was being restrained by heavy metal chains. A moment later, he smiled and lifted his head. He inhaled a deep breath of air. Regardless of how much hardship he had suffered, his father was at the very least still alive. What a touching scene. Han Tiendi laughed faintly. His eyes looked towards Xiao Yang and said, "Perhaps you should be thanking us. Your father has an ordinary talent. If he was to train normally, he will not be able to reach the Do Huang class in his lifetime. In order to allow him to live safely until now, we have given him quite a lot of medicinal pills of our Han clan. Otherwise, such accident might have long since happened to him." I will. Jiu Yuan and the others frowned upon hearing Han Tiendi's words. However, a smile rose on Xiao Yang's face. He nodded gently and laughed. "You can be rest assured that Xiao Yang will remember this big favor." Lei Ying and the others were startled as they looked at the smile on Xiao Yang's face. A dense chill rose within their hearts. A person with a ferocious look was not terrifying. A terrifying person was someone who was able to keep a smile on his face while a murderous intent was surging within his heart. Han Tiendi's face twitched slightly. Xiao Yang's talent was as glaring as Xiao Xian back then. However, the former's viciousness had clearly greatly surpassed Xiao Xian. Han Tiendi stared at Xiao Yang's blood-red eyes. He clearly understood that the words Xiao Yang had uttered earlier were not mere words of anger. If Xiao Yang was given the opportunity, Han Tiendi believed that the former would definitely exterminate the entire Han clan until none of them remained. However, it was likely extremely difficult for such an opportunity to appear. Transaction? Xiao Yang clenched his hand. An ancient jade flashed and appeared. It was the final Tuoshi ancient god jade. Xiao Yang did not try using a counterfeit jade. This was because he understood that this method would not work on an expert like Han Tiendi. A greed and desire flashed across Han Tiendi's eyes as he looked at the ancient jade in Xiao Yang's hands. Once he obtained this final piece of ancient jade, he would learn of the location of the Tuoshi ancient god mansion and subsequently open it. At that time, he would truly leap into becoming the overlord of this world once he obtained the embryonic DI tier pill inside it. At that time, the so-called alliance would be just like an ant in his eyes. A flip of his hand could easily destroy it. The bodies of Lei Ying's group became a lot more tense after they saw Xiao Yang take out the ancient jade. However, no one uttered anything to stop Xiao Yang at this moment. From Xiao Yang's appearance earlier, he would likely turn against anyone who tried to stop him from rescuing his father at this moment. We will exchange the person and jade together. You should understand just how simple it is for me to kill your father. Hence, you better not allow me to see you pulling any tricks. Hun Tiendi withdrew his eyes and slowly said. Xiao Yang glanced at Hun Tiendi. He spread his hand and the ancient jade slowly rose under his control. Seeing this, Hun Tiendi also waved his sleeve. The prison formed by the black fog scattered. With a flick of his finger, those metal chains on Xiao Zhan's body were all released. Finally, he clenched his hand. It turned into a black ray of light that grabbed onto Xiao Zhan. Here. Hun Tiendi waved his large hand. Xiao Zhan was brought to Xiao Yang under the restraint of the black light. After which, a thought passed through Xiao Yang's mind and the ancient jade also shot directly towards Hun Tiendi. At the same time, Xiao Yang pressed his toes on the air and shot forward. His large hand grabbed onto Xiao Zhan. A suction force erupted and he pulled the latter over. He slashed his hand downwards and the black restraint around Xiao Zhan's body was cut. Hun Tiendi grabbed onto the ancient jade just as Xiao Yang had managed to rescue Xiao Zhan. Even with his calmness, he could not help but laugh out loud as he sensed the warmth in the ancient jade. Now that the ancient jade was in his hand, he was already able to see himself stepping into the stage that he dreamed of. Father. Xiao Yang's excited body trembled involuntarily as he caught hold of Xiao Zhan. His body flashed and he quickly flew into the alliance. After which, he carefully placed Xiao Zhan down. Yang, it is really you. Escaping from the restraint and being rescued had occurred in a split second to Xiao Zhan. He had just recovered his focus when he saw the face that was in close proximity. His trembling hand touched Xiao Yang's face. That terrified manner was as though he was afraid that this was only an illusion. This was in spite of him constantly hoping for this day to come. Father, you have suffered. Sorry. Seeing that thin ice-like appeared of Xiao Zhan, even Xiao Yang could not help but feel his eyes turn red. Both of his legs heavily knelt in front of the former. Even the huge rock under him had ended up with many crack lines. It is really you. Xiao Zhan's hands touched Xiao Yang's face in a trembling fashion. He sensed the warmth and his tears rolled down uncontrollably. This scene caused all those around to feel sad. Yang, quick get up. It is all because father is useless. Xiao Zhan wiped off his tears. He hurriedly lifted Xiao Yang to his feet and looked at this face, which had become more matured than back then. His face involuntarily revealed a pleased expression. The thing that a father really wanted to see was the growth of his child. The person whom he was most worried about when he was captured back then was this youngest son. However, this child was his greatest miracle and pride. Xiao Yang inhaled a breath as he looked at the messy Xiao Zhan, who appeared much older compared to back then. He softly said, Father, big brother and second brother are all waiting for you. I will bring you to meet them once the matter here is over. Now, however, allow me to settle some matters. Protect my father. Xiao Yang turned his head and spoke to those experts from the Sky Mansion beside him. Alliance Chief, you can be rest assured that we will protect him until our death. Those dozens of Sky Mansion experts, who had reached the peak of the Do Zun class, immediately replied respectfully after hearing this. Immediately, they moved and appeared around Xiao Zhan, providing him with a tight protection. Yang, this. Xiao Zhan was startled as he watched this scene. These people around him all possessed powerful and terrifying auras. They were considered quite strong even in the Hun clan. However, he felt a great disbelief in his heart as he watched these experts in his eyes being incomparably respectful when speaking to Xiao Yang. Could it be that the young son whom he had once needed to protect had already become this powerful? Father, there is no need to worry. They will guard you. Xiao Yang withdrew the emotions within his heart. He smiled slightly towards Xiao Zhan before turning around. An extremely dark and chilly murderous intent covered his eyes. The murderous desire in his heart had reached a rich and unrestrainable extent. Hence, he must kill. Jiu Yuan, Lei Ying and the others threw their gazes over when Xiao Yang had turned around. They looked at him. There was also a chill surging in their eyes. The Hun clan had already managed to gather all of the Tu-Shi ancient god jade. They must definitely not be allowed to leave smoothly. Xiao Yang lowered his chin in the face of their glances. He quickly lifted his head and looked towards Hun Tiendi, who was holding onto the ancient jade and laughing wildly towards the sky. A ferocious arc was formed on the corner of his mouth. Immediately, he smiled and spoke softly. Let's attack. Surging murderous intent spread over the entire place as the words sounded. Killing desire suddenly surged within the eyes of Lei Ying, Hu Jin and the rest after Xiao Yang's words sounded. The energy around them began to fluctuate intensely. Set up the formation. A couple of stern cries resounded throughout the sky at almost the same time. Those from the Jiu clan, Yang clan, Lei clan and even the Hun clan began to activate their formations with lightning-like speed. Terrifying Do Chi pillars charged to the clouds from all directions. The mighty aura caused the hearts of those observers outside of the mountain range to tremble. They repeatedly rejoiced that they had not charged in. Otherwise, they would likely perish in the face of such a violent big battle. It seems that all of you are indeed unwilling to give up. The smile on Han Tiandi's face was slowly withdrawn as he stood in the sky. He once again transformed into that seemingly cheerful, indifferent manner. He lowered his head to look at Xiao Yang's group. It seemed that he was unsurprised at their sudden attack. He also understood that Yu Yuan, Xiao Yang and the others would definitely not simply sit back and watch their Han clan obtain all 8 pieces of jade and successfully open the ancient god mansion. Han Tiendi, hand over the ancient jade. Otherwise we will definitely join hands and flatten your Han clan. Lei Ying's eyes were furious as he cried out. Han Tiendi involuntarily laughed upon hearing this. He flipped his hand and kept the ancient jade in his hand into his storage ring before he smiling said, "Oh? I am really curious about how you end up in this situation if you possessed this ability. Han Tiendi, we will not allow to easily open the ancient god mansion." Jiyu Yuan's face was as deep as water. His body slowly rose into the air as a terrifying fluctuation slowly spread from within his body. Dark clouds quickly gathered in the sky as thunder roared. Xiao Yang, Ling Ying, Yang Jin and the experts, who were stronger than 5-star Do Shungs from the 3 clans as well as the Sky Mansion Alliance, rose into the sky. Their auras surged and the color of the sky changed. In terms of the number of top-level experts, the 3 clans and the Sky Mansion Alliance combined would not be inferior to the Han clan. It was not possible to tell just who would emerge victorious if they were to fight. Jiyu Yuan, I have said before that with the destruction of the Xiao clan, there is no longer anyone who can stop my Han clan. Han Tiendi laughed. Jiyu Yuan frowned. He was just about to speak when the hot-tempered Lei Ying cried out in a deep voice, "Why are you saying so much nonsense to him? All members of the Lei clan listen up, use the 9-dragon sky lightning formation." Understood. The many experts from the Lei clan replied with cold and stern faces after hearing Lei Ying's cry. Immediately, many bright silver light rays rose from within their bodies and swiftly gathered into a mighty thundercloud in the sky. Silver light flashed. Finally, it turned into a 10,000 feet large lightning dragon. The rolling thunder caused the land to tremble. Go. The moment the lightning dragon appeared, it ruthlessly collided into the large army of the Han clan in the sky under the control of the many experts from the Lei clan. Yang clan, great burning sky technique. Yang Jin let out a cold cry after the Lei clan attacked. Monstrous flames immediately surged. It was as though it intended to incinerate this entire place. Finally, the flame turned into a rolling sea of fire that swept towards the Han clan. Ancient God Mirror. The Jiyu clan had also once again formed the ancient mirror that covered the entire place. Rays of light flowed on it. Soon after, an incomparably large light pillar shot out. All attacks erupted at this moment. The energy fluctuation easily destroyed the surrounding towering mountains, leaving nothing behind. Han Tiendi watched the ferocious attacks rushing over from below with indifferent eyes as he stood in the sky. The sound of clattering chains was emitted from the black clouds that covered the area behind him. After which, many clashing sound appeared. Countless number of black chains shot out from within the black cloud and swiftly formed a dragnet in the sky. Black clouds churned over the chains. Suddenly, many ferocious faces appeared on the black net and continuously emitted some sharp, miserable screech. Bang! The many attacks suddenly arrived as the black net was formed. Immediately, the whole place trembled intensely under the terrifying collision. The land cracked, forming many huge gully-like crack lines. The black net collapsed after the frightening storm in the sky had gradually scattered. However, it managed to block all of the attacks from below before it collapsed. The frightening strength of the Han clan was once again revealed. Han Tiendi, this time around let the both of us decide on a victor. Jiyu Yuan footstepped on the empty space. His body suddenly shot into the clouds while a stern cry spread over the area within tens of thousands of kilometers in a vast and mighty manner. Han Tiendi smiled faintly. His body moved and directly appeared in front of Jiyu Yuan. He understood that the both of them were the strongest representative from both factions. Both of them must restrain each other. Otherwise, the formation of both parties would collapse. Charge! Lei Ying and Yang Jin cried out loud after seeing Jiyu Yuan intervene to restrain Han Tiendi. The experts of the 3 clans and the Sky Mansion Alliance rushed out from behind. Many experts from the Han clan flew out from the black cloud in a swoosh sound. Immediately, a big fight erupted in the sky. Lei Ying and Yang Jin had a clear target. They directly locked onto the Nihility devouring flame. Other than Han Tiendi, the strongest in the Han clan was the Nihility devouring flame. On the other hand, only the both of them from the Alliance's side combined could stop him. Do you really think that the both of you are a match for me just because you have gotten some benefits the last time? The Nihility devouring flame laughed coldly after seeing Lei Ying duo charging towards him. He waved his large sleeve. Black flame rose in a monstrous fashion and directly charged towards Lei Ying duo. Immediately, a frightening devouring power spread. With an increasing number of experts exchanging blows, the entire mountain range began to tremble intensely. That scene caused the expressions of those people in the distance to experience a great change in expression. Bang! Xiao Yang was expressionless as he threw a palm and shattered the spiritual body of an elite dozun of the expert from the Hun clan into dust. His body immediately flashed and he appeared in front of another expert. Each time he struck, there would be an expert from the Hun clan being defeated. Even some expert Do Sheng were seriously injured and forced back in Xiao Yang's hands after a couple of exchanges. Xiao Yang did not attack those experts from the Hun clan who he could not finish off quickly. Currently, he wished to kill the most number of experts from the Hun clan with the fastest speed. Currently, he wished to use the fastest speed to kill the most number of people from the Hun clan. With his efficiency, the number of Hun clan experts who had been killed in Xiao Yang's hands within a short few minutes had reached the double digits. The benefits brought about by the DI state soul had also been revealed in this fight. Rich murderous aura covered Xiao Yang's body. Bang! Xiao Yang extended his hand into the blood fog after beating an elite 3-star Do Sheng into a cluster of blood. He clenched his hand and the remaining soul fragment was vaporized into nothing. A ripple suddenly appeared behind Xiao Yang just as he had just killed this elite Do Sheng from the Hun clan. A dense black flame surged. It turned into a black spear that ruthlessly struck towards the back of Xiao Yang's head. However, that black spear was still a couple of centimeters from Xiao Yang's head when it was sent flying with a clang sound. That scene appeared as though there was an invisible barrier around Xiao Yang. Hun Miesheng, you are indeed still alive. Xiao Yang turned his head. His eyes looked towards the human figure that was completely wrapped in a black flame. Although Xiao Yang was unable to clearly assess his appearance, the feeling from his D-state soul had allowed him to recognize the latter almost immediately. This person was the chief of the Hall of Soul, Hun Miesheng, who had fled with a trace of his soul after being killed by Xiao Yang back then. Xiao Yang, I will not die so easily. Sir Nihility had helped me create a body with his essence flame. My current self cannot be compared to back then. The black flame churned as a pair of scarlet eyes, which was full of hatred, stared at Xiao Yang. His dark and cold voice was accompanied with viciousness as it emitted. An arc was formed over Xiao Yang's icy cold face after he heard this. Hand over your life to me. Hun Miesheng's hand trembled. The dense black flame directly turned into 1,000 feet large black flame chain that trickly shot towards Xiao like a vicious snake. Shatter. Xiao Yang did not show any signs of attacking in the face of Hun Miesheng's assault. He merely uttered a single word. Crack. Invisible spiritual fluctuation swept out after Xiao Yang's voice sounded. The black flame chain collapsed almost instantly. Even the black flame on it had become incomparably dim. The attack from a D-state soul was something that even an 8-star Do Sheng would not dare to underestimate. Although the Nihility devouring flame had spent a great effort to reconstruct his body, his strength was at the very most at the 7-star Do Sheng or so. There was far too much of a gap with the current Xiao Yang. All it took was a brief exchange for Hun Miesheng to be defeated so quickly. The latter's expression was slightly altered. Although he was aware that Xiao Yang had stepped into the DI state soul, he could not believe that he would be so pathetic in the other party's hands. Withdraw. Although a vicious thought was churning in his heart, Hun Miesheng had also understood that his current self was no longer a match for Xiao Yang. He immediately clenched his teeth and quickly pulled back. You will not get to escape this time around. Xiao Yang's eyes looked at Hun Mietian in a cold and indifferent manner. He took a stride forward and the space fluctuated. He had actually appeared behind the latter in a ghost-like fashion. He pressed his finger forward and directly penetrated through the black flame around Hun Mietian. The frightening strength of the D-state soul erupted without being held back. Bang! Hun Miesheng's body suddenly stiffened amidst the low and deep muffled sound. The black flame around him disappeared immediately, revealing a shriveled figure inside. There was no injury on his head, but those eyes of Hun Mietian were hollow. His soul had completely vanished from being struck by Xiao Yang's finger earlier. Is this the spiritual pressure of the D-soul state? Xiao Yang muttered to himself as he looked at his finger. He did not use any Do Qi for the purifying demonic lotus flame to kill Hun Mietian. All he did was to rely on his spiritual strength to kill the latter with lightning-like speed. Such a frightening strength was indeed worthy of the word D. Xiao Yang did not pay much attention on Hun Mietian after killing him in a quick and simple manner. With Hun Mietian's strength, he did not possess much of a threat towards Xiao Yang. After his spiritual strength had stepped into the D state, Xiao Yang was already able to completely overlook Hun Miesheng. Xiao Yang flicked his finger gently. He glanced at the corpse with hollow eyes in front of him in an indifferent manner. With a wave of his hand, he directly shattered the corpse. After which, he frowned and looked at the chaotic battleground in the sky. This was the first time Xiao Yang had seen a war on such scale. The terrifying strength that the Hun clan had displayed had once again caused Xiao Yang's face to become grave. The alliance force present was a combination of the Jiyu clan, Lei clan, Yang clan, and the Sky Mansion alliance. The number of experts present had reached a relatively spectacular level. Despite this, they still appeared to be in a stalemate. Xiao Yang's eyes swept over the battleground. After which, he lifted his head and looked at the black fog, which permeated the sky. There was a continuous stream of experts rushing out from within the black cloud. With Xiao Yang's current strength, it was difficult for anyone below the 7-star Do Sheng class to catch his attention. However, Xiao Yang vaguely felt as though the black fog still hid many auras that even he was extremely afraid of for some unknown reason. This was a faint, weak feeling. If it was not because Xiao Yang's soul had reached the DI state, it was impossible for him to detect it in such detailed manner. However, this feeling caused Xiao Yang's expression to become increasingly grave. The strength of the Hun clan did appear to be unusually terrifying. The battle today might well be a bitter fight if this continues. Xiao Yang's eyes flashed. Suddenly, they were rotated. He looked at the north of the battleground. Black fog churned and a couple of mighty auras surged. Clearly, there were many experts from the Hun clan seated there. Even the three clans and the Sky Mansion alliance had suffered many deaths in this place. Hun Feng. A cold glint flashed in Xiao Yang's eyes as he looked at the somewhat young figure within a group. It was rumored that this person was the most outstanding person amongst the younger generation of the Hun clan. It was likely that he would be able to threaten the Hun clan if he could capture this person. This thought flashed across Xiao Yang's mind. He smiled coldly and moved. His body turned into a black light that hurried towards a black fog region. Bang! Hun Feng had a cold expression as he grabbed the head of an expert from the Yang clan. He looked at the latter's horrified expression. A scarlet and ferocious expression flashed across his eyes. Fresh blood erupted with the latter's brains. After which Hun Feng merely tossed that person aside. You are useless. Hun Feng rubbed his hands and spoke indifferently. There were 4 Hun clan elders, who had reached the 4-star Do Sheng class, guarding behind him. Through this, one could see that the Hun clan greatly valued his safety. Young Master Hun Feng, let's withdraw a little. There are far too many experts from the 3 clans nearby. A grey-haired old man glanced around him before suddenly speaking. This place could be considered to be a little deep. Although the true experts from the 3 clans had basically been held back, it was always right to be a little careful. Let's go. Hun Feng, who had a good time being on a killing spree, frowned but did not object. He nodded and was about to pull back. Haha, young Master Hun Feng, you actually dare to simply leave after killing someone? Aren't you being a little too free and easy? However, a faint laughter suddenly sounded as Hun Feng was turning around. He lifted his head in a startled manner and saw a black-clothed young man appearing above his head at some unknown moment. The latter was smilingly looking at him. Xiao Yang, you have actually escaped from being chased by Hun Miesheng? Hun Feng laughed coldly. His expression had changed slightly after seeing the black-clothed young man. Chased? Xiao Yang was startled. He immediately came to a sudden comprehension. It seemed that the speed in which killed Hun Mietian earlier was far too quick. Hence, it did not manage to attract much attention. Young Master Hun Feng, hurry up and leave. Xiao Yang's spiritual state has reached the DI state. His strength has far surpassed what appears on the surface. Hun Miesheng is likely already killed by him. A white-haired old man from amongst the 4 elders guarding Hun Feng had an extremely sharp pair of eyes. His heart sunk after seeing Xiao Yang's expression. He subsequently cried out in a low voice. Hun Feng's face twitched involuntarily after hearing these words. His eyes were filled with dissatisfaction as they looked at Xiao Yang. Back at the demonic flame realm, Hun Feng completely need not fear Xiao Yang. However, after only a few years, the pressure that the latter gave him was actually not any weaker than the grand elders within the clan. Move. Although he was dissatisfied, Hun Feng clearly understood that if he was to fight with Xiao Yang with his current strength, he would not likely end up dead. Hence, he did not dare to bite off more than he could chew. His body moved and he hurried towards the distant black clouds in the sky. The 4 elders behind stared cautiously at Xiao Yang as they withdrew. Xiao Yang merely smiled after seeing 5 of them leaving. He clenched his hand. 4 clusters of brilliant fire glow erupted from his hand. They quickly agglomerated into 4 head-sized fire lotuses that shot towards the 4 elders with lightning-like speed. Charge! A chill rose on the faces of the 4 elders after they saw Xiao Yang persistently pursuing them. Their sleeves shook and python-like chains rushed out. The fire lotuses had arrived the moment the chain was shot out. After which, they adhered onto the chains. The 4 elders could not escape no matter how they struggled. Bang! The fire lotuses suddenly exploded while the 4 elders were preparing to toss the chains aside. 4 brilliant lines of flames flew along the chains. In an instant, the flames struck on the hands of the 4 elders and subsequently invaded their bodies. Boom! After the line of fire invaded their bodies, the clothes of the four elders were directly turned into dust. Soon after, pink fire seedling escaped from their pores. The sizzling sound was extremely deafening. Sharp and miserable screech continued to be emitted from the mouths of the four members of the Hun clan while they were crazily unleashing their do chi to extinguish the flame within their bodies. Xiao Yang's expression was indifferent as his eyes swept over the four of them. He flicked his finger gently. 4 wisps of wind shot out. The four elders of the Hun clan spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. Their bodies were like the broken wings of birds as they swiftly landed onto the ground. After which, they were surrounded by the experts from the 3 clans below. Hun Feng's expression had finally become ugly after he saw that the 4 elders, who had reached the 4-star Do Sheng class, were actually so worthless in Xiao Yang's hands. He quickly unleashed his maximum speed and hurriedly fled. I have said that you will not be able to escape. Hun Feng's body had just moved when a voice that was filled with an endless chill was suddenly transmitted from behind him. The former shrunk his eyes. He flipped his hand and a black flame churned. An incomparably fierce palm strike suddenly erupted. Bang! The ferocious palm wind from Hun Feng was just unleashed when it seemed to have met with an invisible barrier. A loud sound appeared and the former's hand felt a bone-piercing pain. His strength was reflected back and directly caused a mouthful of fresh blood to surge through his throat. However, it was finally forcefully swallowed by Hun Feng. Hun Feng swallowed a mouthful of fresh blood. His heart trembled from shock. The two of them were completely at 2 different levels. Hun Feng was just about to use his secret technique to increase his speed as this thought flashed across his mind when a somewhat icy cold hand gently appeared on his neck. The iciness caused his body to stiffen. Ancestor, save me. A sharp scream was emitted from Hun Feng's mouth as his body stiffened. Ancestor? Xiao Yang's eyes narrowed after hearing Hun Feng's voice. His eyes swiftly swept over the battleground in the sky. Currently, Hun Tiendi, the nihility devouring flame and the 4 demon saints had been held back. Just who is this ancestor of Hun Feng? Bang! The black cloud in the sky suddenly churned intensely while this doubt flashed across Xiao Yang's heart. After which, the black cloud surged and an elderly figure, who appeared to be about to die, slowly descended. At the same time, a vast and mighty terrifying aura, which did not lose to the black submerged king of the Jiyu clan, Jiyu Lai, suddenly swept apart. 8-star Do Sheng? Xiao Yang's eyes shrunk slightly as he sensed this incomparably powerful aura. The Hun clan was actually hiding such an expert. Young friend, why don't you let this useless descendant of Mayav? The elderly figure slowly stepped forward. He appeared in front of Xiao Yang with just a step. The winkle-covered elderly face was covered with smiles and his tone was extremely friendly. Who are you? Xiao Yang smiled coldly and asked. I am Hun Yuantian, haha, a useless old man who had died in Xiao Xian's hands back then. The old man laughed. Xiao Yang could sense the former's smile had become a lot darker when mentioning the words Xiao Xian. You do not appear like a dead person. Xiao Yang frowned slightly. This old fellow's appearance was far too mysterious. He must be cautious. However, he wondered just how many of these experts, who had never appeared in the past, did the Hun clan had. If a couple more of them appeared, it was likely that even this alliance army today would not be able to do anything to the Hun clan. Even Xiao Yang felt some unease in his heart as he thought of this. This Hun clan was indeed far too unfathomable. Hun Yuantian laughed. However, he did not reply this question. He smilingly said, why don't you hand him over to me? This alliance of yours is really insufficient if you wish to retain our Hun clan. Is that so? Xiao Yang's eyes became slightly cold. He suddenly increased the strength of his arm, which was holding onto Hun Feng. This caused the latter's face to turn purple as he continued to struggle. Hun Yuantian sighed helplessly upon seeing this scene. He did not show any signs of being threatened. Faint black aura seeped out from within his body. Immediately, his shriveled hand quickly emitted a rotten stench. Finally, he moved and gently slammed towards Xiao Yang. It was possible for Xiao Yang to detect a somewhat mysterious dead aura from that shriveled bone-like hand. Since you refuse to listen to nice words, you can just go and die. It is not up to you to decide who should live and who should die. Xiao Yang involuntarily laughed coldly after seeing Hun Yuantian rushing over in a flash. His hand, which was grabbing onto Hun Feng, increased its strength. The latter was also struggling crazily. Xiao Yang, ancestor will not let you off. Hun Feng's expression was purple. He viciously stared at Xiao Yang. Suddenly, his body began to swell intensely. The do chi within his body also became wild and violent. Self-destruct her. Xiao Yang's expression did not change after he saw this scene. He suddenly increased the strength of his arm. A crack sound appeared and he directly broke Hun Feng's neck. Although Hun Feng's neck was broken, his body continued to swell rapidly. Finally, it emitted a bang. An earth-shaking energy storm exploded along with a bloody fog. The blood fog slowly scattered before disappearing. However, Xiao Yang's body continued to float in the sky. His vast and mighty spiritual strength had formed an invisible barrier around him. The attack that Han Feng had created from self-destructing did not cause him any harm. Xiao Yang's eyes swept over the place in an indifferent manner. He quickly took a step back as the space in front of him fluctuated. An elderly figure appeared in a flash. A palm wind containing a rich deathly aura adhered over Xiao Yang's chest as it flew past. Han Yuantian's body appeared in a flash after his palm missed. He glanced at the spot where Han Feng had self-destruct. His winkle-covered face contained some gloominess. Immediately, he flipped his hand and a soul rushed out from within the black fog. Finally, it entered his sleeve. "Brat, I will definitely make you suffer." Han Tian stared densely at Xiao Yang after retrieving the trace of Han Feng's soul. The smile on his face had finally completely disappeared. He did not expect that Xiao Yang would be this vicious. The latter did not give him any opportunity to rescue Han Feng. Instead, Xiao Yang had simply launched a killing strike. If it was not because Han Feng had decisively chose to self-destruct and allow a part of his soul to escape, it was likely that he would have been completely destroyed by Xiao Yang. Even though this was the case, this would cause Han Feng great harm. An old fellow who won't die is like a parasite. Allow me to be the one to send you off. Xiao Yang laughed coldly. He appeared completely unafraid. Although his Do Chi was merely at the 6-star intermediate level, he had the qualification to fight against an 8-star Do Sheng by simply relying on his D-state spiritual strength. Although Han Yuantian was powerful, he was not as strong as Lei Ying and Yang Jin. According to Xiao Yang's guess, this old fellow has likely only reached the initial 8-star Do Sheng class. Xiao Yang would not be afraid of him in a real fight. The members of the Xiao clan always has such razor-sharp tongue. I will allow you to enjoy what is called a fate worse than death once you land in my hand. Han Yuantian's expression was densely cold. He parted his mouth, revealed his yellow teeth and spoke sinisterly. Han Yuantian's finger moved without leaving a trace as he spoke. Traces of invisible fluctuation suddenly surged from behind Xiao Yang. Finally, they entwined into an invisible net that suddenly covered Xiao Yang. At the same time, Han Yuantian also shot forward and appeared in front of Xiao Yang in the blink of an eye. His stench-filled palm directly smashed onto Xiao Yang's chest. Bang! Han Yuantian's palm was half an inch from Xiao Yang's chest when it suddenly stilled. A layer of invisible barrier had appeared on his palm. Both parties had ruthless collided. The frightening force had directly caused the surrounding space collapsed and formed many crack lines. Displaying your spiritual strength in front of me. What a joke. Xiao Yang observed Han Yuantian. He laughed. A thought passed through his mind. Vast and mighty spiritual strength surged from him. In almost an instant, he had shattered the invisible spiritual net behind. Immediately, fierce pink flame seeped out from within his body, causing it to turn into a crystal-clear pink glass in the blink of an eye. Xiao Yang's aura had soared greatly after he used the extermination fire lotus. Soon after, a flame quickly gathered on his palm. A 6-colored fire lotus was formed. The current Xiao Yang needed to only think about it to use the extermination fire lotus. The terrifying strength of a D-state soul had raised the speed of its formation by many times. Waves after waves of exterminating heat wave swiftly spread after the fire lotus was formed. Soon after, Xiao Yang flicked his finger. A fire lotus was accompanied by a brilliant fire tail as it directly shot towards Han Yuantian's head. Although Xiao Yang's actual strength was still at the 6-star Do Sheng class, the might of the extermination fire lotus was many times stronger than before. This increase was brought about by his D-state soul. Deathly Silence Gate. Han Yuantian's expression was slightly solemn as he sensed the destructive ripple being emitted from the brilliant fire lotus. Both of his hands had formed many strange seals. Immediately, a rich black fog surged out from within his palm. It turned into a huge black door, which had been filled with a mysterious aura. The door was opened and a black hole-like darkness was revealed. No one knew just what kind of mysterious realm it led to. The extermination fire lotus flew across the sky. Finally, it exploded just outside of the Deathly Silence Gate. Immediately, a terrifying destructive storm swept apart. Humph, absorb it. The storm was reflected within Han Yuantian's eyes. He laughed in a dark and cold manner. A terrifying suction force was suddenly emitted. At the end, the 10,000 feet large firestorm had actually been swallowed into the huge gate. Is this the Deathly Silence Gate? A surprise flashed across Xiao Yang's eyes after he saw this scene. It was not because Han Yuantian was able to easily deal with the extermination fire lotus. Instead, it was due to Han Yuantian possessing such a mysterious object. You actually dare to reveal such tricks in front of me. This Deathly Silence Gate of mine was created from an elite Dodi from the ancient times. It is able to devour everything. Han Yuantian involuntarily laughed strangely after being aware of Xiao Yang's surprise. This deathly silence gate was extremely strange. This was because this was completely different from an ordinary Do skill. It was not even possible to classify it as a kind of Do skill. Instead, it was more appropriate to describe it as a kind of realm being created through one's training. Hun Yuan-Tien had been training for hundreds of years in order to successfully master this deathly silence gate and enable it to possess such a might. The space inside the door was filled with a deathly aura. Even a 7-star Do Sheng would likely be eroded and killed by the deathly aura if he was sucked inside and could not escape. After his death, the essence blood of his would become nourishment for the deathly silence gate, allowing it to become even stronger. During the ancient times, many experts had fought to snatch this deathly silence gate. It was unexpected that Hun Yuan-Tien was actually able to create it. It is indeed a good thing. Xiao Yang licked his lips. Even he was a little familiar with this deathly silence gate. Your essence blood and soul will likely greatly increase the strength of my deathly silence gate. Hun Yuan-Tien's body flashed and appeared above the huge door. He sat down and his eyes stared at Xiao Yang in a sinister manner. Immediately, the seal formed by his hands changed. Black light suddenly surged from within the large gate. It turned into a black light ray that was dozens of feet in size and suddenly shot out. The speed of the light was extremely quick. It had enveloped around Xiao Yang after it was shot out. Brat, you should head to hell and accompany your ancestor Xiao Xian. Hun Yuan-Tien laughed in a dense voice. A terrifying suction force had suddenly erupted from within the deathly silence gate. The light shrunk and entered the huge gate in a flash. Xiao Yang, who was wrapped by the ray of light, had also disappeared. Hun Yuan-Tien's face became even denser after Xiao Yang was absorbed into the deathly silence gate. No one who had entered the deathly silence gate can come out alive. Once the deathly aura inside eroded all of Xiao Yang's Do Qi, the life and death of the latter would completely be determined by the former's mood. Humph, a group unruly crowd actually has the delusion of flattening our Hun clan. Once we are fully prepared, everyone here can forget about escaping. Hun Yuan-Tien lifted his head after capturing Xiao Yang. His eyes glanced at this incomparably chaotic battleground. After which, they gathered onto the thick dark cloud in the sky and let out a low and deep laughter. The dark black space was filled with a deathly aura. Even Do Qi had become weak in the face such an aura. Xiao Yang's body appeared in a place covered by deathly aura. He looked at this dark black and mysterious place before a strange smile surfaced on his face. He muttered softly, Hun Yuan-Tien, I shall help keep this treasure for you. The purifying demonic lotus flame suddenly swept out from within Xiao Yang's body after his voice sounded. Even those deathly aura was unable to approach him under this great heat. Xiao Yang quickly shut his eyes. A vast and endless spiritual strength erupted from within his body. Within a short moment, it had wrapped around the dark black realm. After which, his body suddenly disappeared. He was already in a dark region the next time he appeared. The middle of this place was a black stone, which hid a great amount of deathly aura. There was a spiritual fluctuation on the black stone. It was the spiritual imprint Hun Yuan-Tien had left within this deathly silence gate. It was precisely because of this that the latter was able to use the deathly silence gate. However, if this thing was removed by another, he would also lose his control over the deathly silence gate. The cold smile on Xiao Yang's face became denser as he looked at the black stone. Capturing Xiao Yang, whose soul had reached the DI state, was the biggest mistake of Hun Yuan-Tien. Bang! Hun Yuan-Tien exploded a Dosheng elder of the Jiyu realm with a palm strike. Black qi rose from his palm and a mini black gate appeared. Traces of bloody qi swiftly surged into the black gate. It is really a strength that causes others to be fascinated. Hun Yuan-Tien revealed a smile on his face as he sensed the increasingly dense deathly aura within the deathly silence gate. However, he was about to once again find a new target when his expression suddenly changed. This was because he discovered that his connection with the deathly silence gate had suddenly weakened. This is bad. This unexpected change caused Hun Yuan-Tien's heart to sunk. He hurriedly attempted to enter the deathly silence gate when he suddenly discovered that his connection with it had actually been completely broken. Hun Yuan-Tien's heart trembled after the connection was lost. That black gate actually directly flew out. It swelled with the wind. A light figure flashed and sat above the huge gate. The figure smilingly looked at Hun Yuan-Tien and laughed, "Thank you for your gift." Hun Yuan-Tien was dull for an instant after seeing this scene. His eyes quickly turned blood red. This video will end here.